Welcome back to another video. My name is Stephen Foster. Today we're taking a look at the mobile photography kit. The mobile photography kit for 2023, which doesn't even sound right. If you've been following this channel for any amount of time, you know that mobile photography is how I got my start in photography, going all the way back to like the iPhone 3G, 3GS. I love mobile photography, and especially this past year where, as you guys know, I had this freak accident with my leg. I couldn't walk for months. I was actually worried I may not be able to walk and carry, my bag on me with my whole full frame camera and everything. Mobile photography ended up being my photography outlet really for the last 6 months and allowing me to do the things I wanted to do with photography, even though I was in a limited physical state. And that's because mobile photography is the most accessible form of photography I believe we have today. It's your phone, it's your personal computer, but it's also your camera, and it's your outlet, your way to express yourself, to capture something, to share that with someone else and inspire someone else or inform someone else. Inform yourself, a reminder to yourself, your future self, if you will. Do things that future you will thank past you, which is now present you, for. And my first videos on this channel are now 7 years old, talking about mobile photography gear and specifically moment lenses, which is a huge part of this setup. And no one's sponsoring this. I do have a lot of Moment things here. Moment has sent me some stuff. I have also purchased a lot of this stuff with my own money, and then some stuff Moment's given me. But there's the disclaimer. No one's paying me to make this video. I'm making this video for all of you because I really enjoy sharing how I got started and actually how I'm still enjoying photography. A huge part of that is mobile photography. So first up, let's talk about the phones. On the left here, I have the iPhone 14 Pro. This phone has been making some waves in the tech community and photography community over the last few months that it's been out now. MKBHD actually just did a video, I think this past week, talking about how the iPhone 14 Pro, even though it was his camera, mobile smartphone camera of the year winner, people are not enjoying it as much as past iPhone cameras. And personally, I would have to agree. There's something about the iPhone 14 Pro with this new sensor that tends to over sharpen. It goes a little yellow for me when I'm even taking RAWs and especially doing some of the auto photography type stuff. And it doesn't even feel like it's over warming all the tones. It just feels like there's a little too much yellow in there, which is kind of weird. Low light performance on this is not great, understandably so, for that 45 megapixel sensor, even though there have been improvements made in low light performance for the ultra wide sensor and the telephoto sensor. But the minimum focus distance that's on this camera for the main camera system is just a little bit too far out, and I think it relies a little too much on the ultra wide camera to make up some of that minimum focus distance. And unfortunately for me, with the 3X camera as well, I find a lot of the same problems with the main camera, but then getting none of the trade-offs with the higher megapixel sensor and some of the other performance things that we should be getting out of that 45 megapixel sensor. That's not even there on the 3X. Personally, I would like to see a 5X optical formula, which would be closer to like 135 millimeters, something ideally f2 or wider, but that's not what we have in this phone. We have this 3X, we have the ultra wide, we have the main. I do like that they shifted the optical formula to about a 24 millimeter full frame equivalent. That is a nice change. There are plenty of good things about this phone, about this camera. This is definitely the best display that's ever been on an iPhone, and I really enjoy editing photos and videos on this device. The battery is very good on this. It is a little bit thicker than past iPhones. I'm gonna do a whole review on the iPhone 14 Pro camera system and talk a little bit more about the phone in general, but that's gonna have to be in another video. But what I'll say, at least in this video, is that if you're going to get this phone specifically for photography or video, be prepared to treat it like you would a mirrorless camera or a DSLR, where you're probably gonna be shooting in RAW, doing a lot of edits to bring out the best and the most out of the hardware that is here. Don't expect the hardware to utilize it for you. And on the other side here, we have Google's Pixel 6a. I've done this over the last few years where I had like the 4A and the iPhone 12, 13, whatever. I usually try to have both an iOS and an Android device just because I feel like those are the two main players. If you have both of those, pretty much covering almost 100% of all of the mobile devices out there. The Pixel 6a got a lot of flack for coming out at its price point of $449 last year. It quickly fell though underneath that $400 limit. I think there are some deals out there where you can get it closer to that $349 price point, which has been more or less where the Pixel A line has been over the last few years. This phone though, I said it when it first came out, is I think the best Pixel phone that Google's made. Yes, I know the 7 and 7 Pro are out. I've used them. I've used the 6 and 6 Pro as well. Nothing compares for me to the 6A. It uses a tried and true camera sensor that's been on the Pixel since the 4, but now it's supercharged with those tensor chips that Google's been making. Those things are awesome. What that makes for is a no lag, no nonsense camera solution. So there's no like shutter lag. It feels really snappy, really well refined. It's just a great experience to have and to use while taking photos. And even when you're not taking photos, if you're trying to just edit and do actually a pretty heavy edit in something like Lightroom, that's all really snappy now because of Google's tensor chips. The display is more than good enough. I think it's actually great for the price point. Battery life is solid, and yeah, I have nothing but good things to say for the Pixel 6a, especially at its price point. I think this is the phone most people should get if you're looking to get a phone that takes solid photos and is also receptive to being upgraded with some of the accessories that we have here. Moving on to the lenses, we have the Moment Fisheye, or the super wide lens. This is the one that has 170 degrees of coverage, as you can see on the side there. This also, along with Moment's wide angle lens, which is about an 18mm optical formula. I used both of these lenses in an early video that I did a few years ago with the Pixel 4a, and I rewatched that video, and I'll link it somewhere around here. That video still holds up, and I think those images still hold up as solid images. Things that I look back on and I go, okay, hey, that's a good photo. I'm not looking back at that and thinking like, oh man, look at the limitations of the technology that we had back there. I'm genuinely looking back at some of these photos going like, these still hold up really well today. The optical formula of the wide angle lens, I think, is the best optical formula for a wide angle shot. I'm not a huge fan of the 24, the 27-ish millimeters that most phones use as their standard camera. I think the 18 wide looks really good without having that optical distortion going out and bending things. You also just have glass, so you get some natural fall off. The point from your focus to out of focus elements in your image. Moment's wide angle lens was the first Moment lens that I ever purchased. I have the original wide angle lens somewhere. This is the V2 for the most recent generations of phones, going I think back to the iPhone 10. But there's something to be said about having a solid optical formula for a mobile device. It just makes the fall off, that point from your in focus elements to your out of focus elements, look really natural, and your out of focus elements actually have a really soft, pleasing blur versus a lot of the stuff that you see produced in software. Moment's Tele lens, or the telephoto lens that they make, has become my most go-to lens attachments. The thing that I shoot with the most if I'm shooting with any of my lenses here. This lens really does punch above its weight. It makes any phone look awesome, I think. I'm actually especially excited about this particular lens in regards to what it's able to do with the iPhone 14 Pro specifically, where the iPhone 14 Pro has that 2x feature where you can punch in and then it just samples a 12 megapixel section of the sensor. You lose a lot of the features that you get with that full 45 megapixel sensor. Instead, throw this on, get the full 45 megapixels out of that sensor, and sort of get that 2x look that I think actually looks better because you have all that nice natural fall off. You have sort of the optical formula applied to those out of focus elements. And personally for me, an antidote to the over sharpening of mobile phones, especially today, has been Moment lenses because they are a little bit softer. That was a big complaint against them a few years ago. I think it's always been a personality of these lenses and an appropriate expectation, throwing glass on top of glass, but ultimately it doesn't deter me. It actually encourages me to shoot more with these because they have character, and I personally like the way it looks. There have actually been several thumbnails for this channel that I've shot with the iPhone, I think going back to the even iPhone 10 and that 58, I think, millimeter equivalent telephoto lens. And I don't know if, I don't know how many people could pick out which of my thumbnails were shot on a smartphone with that lens versus my Canon R5 and you know, a 51.2 or my 24-70, which is currently on my camera right now. It's a pretty good setup. It'll get a lot of things covered for you. Finally, I wanted to talk about this lens that Moment sent me last year. I'm actually really thankful and grateful for them sending this lens to me because while I was injured, I was able to use this macro lens and get some experience with it. I hadn't tried the Moment macro lens up to this point. It is a very aggressive macro. I put this on the Pixel 6a, was taking a lot of shots for a week, made a whole video about it. I'll link that somewhere around here. Very aggressive macro, a 10x macro, which means you're gonna be really punching in on things to get those shots. It looks great. I thought it was solid in its sharpness. The fall off is really tight, but still looks very natural. It is natural because it's actual glass. I think it's a niche use. It wouldn't be my first lens that I purchased for my kit unless I have something very specific in mind. I had a friend who's shooting stuff in his terrarium with like bacteria and like small microbes and things like that, and this did a fantastic job with that. That's a good example of what this lens can do. But out of all of the lenses, I would probably recommend the Tele lens, at least today. I use that for everything from portraits, product photography, even throwing it in with some landscapes. That lens is just super fun to shoot with, and I'm still enjoying it. Years later, still getting use out of it. That's pretty cool. I guess the final thing that I actually want to talk about in regards to lenses is this little contraption, this little device, which is Moment's lens clip attachment device. This just goes right over the phone. It screws to get some tension and tautness to it. You move this little slider over the lens that you want to put one of the Moment lenses on top of, and next thing you know, you have a fully kitted out camera to go take some sweet photos, maybe some video. This actually works really great. I found myself able to line up the lens very easily. I thought that would be a lot harder than it actually is. And it stays in place with sort of these two anti-friction points that are inside of the clip. So I could go out and shoot for like an hour and not have to worry about lens drift on my camera. That's really nice. And this especially came in handy with the Pixel 6a because Moment didn't make a case for mounting lenses to the 6a. I guess there was something that happened there, but no problem because this thing actually gets the job done quite nicely. And I think because I'm sort of trying out this whole white phone life, not putting a case on my phone this year, I like the clip. The clip's easy. I don't have to worry about pulling on and off a case, just throw the clip on, throw a lens on, and away we go, boom. That's fun, I dig it. It's a good time. Now, for a lot of you who have been following this channel for a few years, you probably saw my video back in 2020 talking about my mobile photography kit. That's crazy to think that that was already over 2 years ago, almost 3 years now. It'll be 3 years later this year. A lot of you have seen that, and probably it's no surprise to see that I have an iPhone, I have a Pixel here, I have some Moment lenses. The new addition to this kit that I've been experimenting more with in the last year have been filters, and specifically filters on my phones using this Moment bracket. And if you remember, actually a couple years ago with the Light Chaser Pro, I'd started using filters. That's actually what originally got me into using filters on my phone. Moment sent this little contraption over, which I thought would be a little cumbersome at first, similarly to the lens mount bracket. But this little thing just slides over your phone again. It has these anti-friction points. You twist this little dial here, and you're able to throw a 67 millimeter thread mounted filter on this. You can even adapt it up to like a 77 or even an 82 millimeter thread mount. But this actually has become one of the accessories that I prefer now, if not the accessory I prefer now, over shooting with the Moment lens. While the different camera systems that are on all these phones, it's actually wild, even the Pixel 6a has 2 cameras on it. You have optical focal length choices. Sometimes you'll get the most bang for your buck, especially if you're shooting outdoors, with a filter over using something like a lens. And here's why. When you're shooting with something like a CP filter, that's what I have here. This is my CP filter, probably my most used filter. This will cut down a lot of glare, especially if you're shooting over water, shooting through glass like a window, or just shooting anywhere there's hard surfaces that are reflecting light. This is going to make your image look more color neutral, give you a little bit more saturation, and help balance out reflections so water actually looks like water. You can actually see through a window or see through glass, and hard surfaces actually look like a surface and not just some blown out mirror that is making your photo look bad. Especially if you're doing outdoor photography, especially if you're doing landscapes or just doing any type of photography outdoors. Everyone always asks in these videos, like, if I could only get one of these things, where should I start? I think filters, if you're going to be shooting outdoors specifically and you're thinking, I just want to take really great landscapes or I want to be out in nature, the CP filter is awesome. The CP filter would be my go-to. If I can only carry one thing with me outdoors, taking a solid landscape photo, I'm probably taking the CP filter with me. A little bit more experimental, and this is something that is not necessarily my vibe, my style, but I do love that Moment's done this. They made these CineFlare lenses. I'm gonna try to hold this up to the camera and show you what this looks like. But they're these lenses that have these lines that don't resolve on your sensor, or they're not supposed to resolve on your sensor. But what it does is as light picks up against these, it kind of gives your shot that anamorphic look for the light flares that come off of like some light source, whether that's like a car or like market lights. These can be really fun and can give you a look that you wouldn't otherwise get on your phone. In fact, that's like a great, you know, the whole point of having mobile photography accessories is to get shots that you can't get with your phone, but still get those shots with your phone and not have to upgrade to a multi-$1,000 camera setup and all the stuff that comes with going with a full frame camera. This is a fun tool that gets you like 95% of the way to a look that you otherwise in the past just you couldn't get. You were buying like an anamorphic lens for $20,000 or whatever and throwing that on some big camera rig. It's cool that we have something that can artistically get you most of the way there to begin experimenting with that. And while I don't have it right here right now, I think the third filter that I would recommend is a VND, especially if you're gonna do video. Being able to have a VND just gets you all that saturation and contrast without like blowing out your image. It allows you to lock your shutter speed and have a shutter speed that looks more natural when filming with your phone. Probably already seen this if you're into photography, but even if you're just getting started and you're thinking, hey, I want to shoot video outside, the VND is probably the way to go. So CP filter, if you're going to be taking photos outside, you want that to be your jam. Probably a VND if you're looking at doing video and need to stop down even more light to get the frame rates that you want. And then this CineFlare lens if you're looking for a particular bit of style or a particular look. This will get you a lot of the way there. Finally, there is one accessory, one tool that I haven't placed out here because I wanted to save it for the end and talk about it here at the end, because I think one of the big problems that I have with mobile photography is that it's felt like it's difficult to get something that I feel like I'm gonna use for at least 5 years. The big deal with having like a big camera is that you see people use their big DSLR mirrorless cameras and their glass, their lenses on their cameras for 5-10 years. That's a lot of life. Some people I've seen get 15 years out of a camera, 20 years out of a camera. In fact, I have an FD lens up here on this shelf that I showed off on this channel. I'll link it somewhere here. That's 50 years old that I can still use with my Canon R5 and an adapter and take really solid photos. Part of the reason I got into Moments lenses is because I could take them from phone to phone, iOS, Android, it didn't matter. Part of the reason why I'm so stoked on Moments filter solutions is it is a thread mount, meaning I could use any of my filters with it. There's no specific filter that's married to a specific platform or device. But the longest reigning photo accessory tool that I have, it's been hiding right off screen here this whole time, is the ShoulderPod G1 Grip. This thing is a tank. The spring that is on here is still like as good as day one. It's tight, it locks really well. Arms, the elbows here, the padding is still on here solid. The thread mount at the bottom still works, is still nice, easy, screws on and off, tight, fine. There's no like, I guess variance in the threading. It's 7 years out of this. This has survived an iPhone 6, an iPhone 7, an iPhone 10, I don't, what was between the 10 and the 14, a bunch of phones between the 10 and the 14. Pixels, I think I started using this around the 3s and 4s and then 5s and 6. Anytime I go out for a shoot, this is what's coming with me. This is my grip. This is what helps me have some ergonomics with my phone so I can be out photographing for hours, just like I would with my Canon camera. And if you're going to get into mobile photography, if you're already into mobile photography and you haven't gotten a grip like the ShoulderPod G1, I would say this is the first thing you should get. I know I was talking about like different looks and things like that, but this is for the joy of the craft, the ergonomics of it all, and something that if I try to boil this down to like how much this cost me per year that I've used it, it's like probably single-digit dollars. Just a great tool. I do also need to give an honorable mention to Studio Neat's Glyph, which for some reason I can't find since my studio got moved. I'll have to hit them up and see if I can get another one. Both of those tools, the ShoulderPod or the Studio Neat Glyph, I think are great if you need it attached to tripods or just have a little extra grip on a phone and have a tool that you know is gonna work in future iterations of phones and not be phased out or rendered useless because of a design change on a particular platform or a particular phone. It's funny because grips are not the most seductive things about mobile photography, but I gotta hand it to ShoulderPod and this particular grip. It's held up so well. It does feel like just such a great ergonomic extension to the phone. I can trust my phone in it. Never once have I had a phone slip out of here. So again, none of this was sponsored. I know I have a lot of Moment stuff here, some, you know, iPhone, Google Pixel, the ShoulderPod. Moment has sent me some stuff. I have got some of this stuff from different providers over the years. Such is the nature of YouTube. No one paid to sponsor this video. I made this video because I love sharing with all of you what works for me, what I'm enjoying, what I'm getting a lot of value of when it comes to my creativity and my craft. And I love going back to this place with mobile photography because mobile photography for me was my entrance point. And I think it's the entrance point for thousands, if not millions of people out there today. And so to be able to share my story, where I came from, and actually how this still impacts and influences my photography work today, it's just really special. And I love seeing mobile photography gear and the tools just come together, be accessible, have that like long-term value for people. So we could take the coolest photos that we possibly can with our phones. That's really what it comes down to. Now, if there's something in this particular video that I haven't made a previous video about, leave it down in the comments below. I will make a review of the iPhone 14 Pro. I feel like I'm finally getting to a place where like I've made my peace about some of the flaws and I know what I really do dig and love about it. So I think that video will come out very soon. But let me know if you have any other further questions. I love hearing from all of you in the comments. Again, my name is Stephen Foster. Thank you so much for watching. If this is your first time on the channel or you have yet to subscribe, I'd ask that you would. It really does help me out. Be kind, both in life and in the comments below, and like this video. Like this video if you enjoy mobile photography. Hey, if mobile photography was your start getting into photography, like this video, and actually I'd be curious to see if we get this video a ton of likes, because what that would show me, and I think the world, is that, hey, people take good photos on their phone. They care about photography on their phones. We care about cameras getting better on our phones and not regressing, not over sharpening. So with that, we will do it again soon. I realize with the camera further back now, because I'm shooting these at 35, but I've moved the whole setup further back. I can't like swipe at the camera lens like I used to like outro us. So I don't know how I'm gonna do these outros now. I love the look though. I love like the more compressed look of like coming a little bit tighter. So should I tease future videos? I'm working on a video right now of the Polar Pro iPhone 14 setup. That's gonna be interesting. And for a couple months now, I've been testing Sandmark's telephoto lens. And I'll make a video about that. And I might have to make a video comparing that to the Moment Tele lens. If we get there, maybe. Leave a comment down below. Later.